I've never done a collab. Hi, I'm Case Spivey, and this is my friend Alice from Bean Book Reviews. From Bean Book Reviews, and we've known each other since high school. But now you've just moved up to the area, and we're going to do a book discussion because I just finished This Is How You Lose the Time War, which you recommended to me.
Yes, I did.
Yes. When I first started it, I sort of like live texted you my feelings on the first 50 pages.
Yeah.
And so you kind of knew what I was thinking along those lines, where I was mostly kind of confused, I guess.
It can be confusing in the beginning.
Yeah. It's sort of like overwritten, but then doesn't tell you that much. And so I was sort of back and forth on whether or not I was enjoying it at first. But then, especially towards the end, actually, they make it like really clear. Like, it's a Romeo and Juliet retelling. But I think at the beginning it doesn't really hit the Romeo and Juliet beats. So by the time I realized it was Romeo and Juliet, they had said it directly, and then it was like from then on it was Romeo and Juliet. But I didn't pick up on that earlier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not at all. Like, it didn't come across that way.
I mean, I guess I didn't really either.
Yeah.
It was like, I was just enjoying the prose.
Yeah.
Because it's like very poetic throughout.
It is.
And I liked the language, and it was like very romantic, even though you didn't know what was coming with both of them. Yeah, definitely confusing plot-wise at the beginning.
When I think I felt like it was either too much or not enough for me. Like, I really liked the letters. I thought the letters were like the meat of the story. Like, that moved all of the plot forward is the letter. But yeah, I thought the letters moved the plot forward up until like the last like 3 chapters or so, where it's just red. And there will be spoilers. And Blue's dead. That last part was the first time I felt like the prose section moved the plot at all. Before that, it almost felt like that part was too much. Like, it would say the same kind of thing. Like, you'd get the same thing in the letters, and it wouldn't necessarily add anything for me. Because at least for me, I felt like I almost wanted more from the prose, or to cut it entirely. Like, it would be an amazing short story with just the letters. It'd be phenomenal. Or I wanted it to be quite a bit more, because I never once had like an image of what exactly they were doing, or like exactly what red and blue looked like. I didn't have a strong feeling about, like, especially until the very, very end, I didn't have a strong feeling about what their different factions were like, or like exactly what they were up to all the time. And so most of it is I just enjoyed the romance of the two of them. And like, the concept is so good. That's the thing about this book, is like the concept, A+. But execution, I don't know, like a C- or something. I don't know. Because we both read the Strange the Dreamer, that series. We both read that. And I thought she had really poetic writing. But I would have like the clearest image in my head. When she wrote really poetically, I would have like the most vivid image. I could like picture every character in every setting. That's true. Fully. Yeah. And I never once felt like I had that same thing with this one, even though the language was a bit extra in a lot of places. Like, it was poetic, but it felt overwritten, where Laini Taylor didn't, even doing kind of the same things.
Yeah, this style definitely left, like, it feels cloudy. Like, you're not really sure what anything looks like. You're not really sure what the world is. Not really sure how they're actually leaving messages to each other. Yeah. Like, physically, like, how they're accessing those. But I think, like, describing that part, especially in a sci-fi type book, would have taken, like, a book at least twice the size.
That's true.
And since it wanted to
could have been twice the size, though. This is a thin book.
Yes, yeah.
Like, it could have been twice the size, and I think
that's true.
I've been on board for that. Yeah.
I think that they wanted to focus on, like, the romance of it, though, and not the sci-fi aspect. Like, this takes place in a sci-fi setting, but it's not about the sci-fi. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, the cloudiness is definitely not for all readers, I think.
It makes for a very slow start. As you're starting to get in, it was like, am I actually enjoying it all? I think I wasn't like on board until like maybe 160 pages,
Oh,
honestly.
geez.
Like, it took a while before I was like, actually, I think I like this book. But, like, that was a long ways. But some of it was just, like, it did feel overwritten in some places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, like, at least for me, like, my reading drove to the letters.
Mm-hmm.
So I would read really fast through the overwritten
That's
parts.
what I was doing, too.
And then read the letters.
Yeah, that's why I felt like the rest of it it wasn't even necessary. I got to the letters and I was like, oh yeah, this is like telling me more about what we just recapped, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was like a lot of it could have only been the letters, and I feel like it would have been just as enjoyable, yeah.
I know what you're saying with that, because there was so much in the letters.
Yeah. And it wasn't that the prose then added something totally different. It was usually that the prose would happen and then you get the letter and you'd be like, ah, yes, that was what was going on there. And it just told you more of it.
I did throughout have kind of a sneaking suspicion, like maybe they're actually secretly plotting against each other. And I kind of liked that.
Yeah,
that's
always
not
that,
in
like,
Romeo
tension.
and Juliet.
That's true.
Yeah.
Right?
No sense of like, I'll probably have to kill you later, but here's another letter from me.
Right? Yeah, there was just like a little... It went to way more and more. It definitely started off very strong with a lot of suspicion, and then later they're like, nope, I just like fully love you against all odds. Which is cute.
It was cute.
The romance was cute. I wish I had a better picture of like who they were. Or their voices. That was one of the things that bothered me a lot. Is that there's two writers in this. There's two writers, and yet the prose part and then Red's letters and Blue's letters all have the same voice to me. Like, there was no distinction between their voices at all. Like, if they didn't have the like two Blue and from Red parts, I'd have no idea who was talking. And I felt like that was true all the way to the end. I had no idea of any distinction between their personalities at all, even though it felt like they should have been. Because they're from, like, what I couldn't decide, actually. They're from fully different, like, one is from kind of an android world and experience, and the other's from a very, like, organic, natural world and experience, like, fairy kind of people, it seemed like. And yet, they didn't talk any different from each other, and maybe that was kind of the intention, was that they were so similar, and that was the point. But it felt like they could have been super different. Like, they also seemed to have different, like, ways of approaching things, and I guess you got most of that from the prose parts rather than the letters. But it was weird that the voices were so similar.
I think it would have helped distinguish the sections, at least, like from just like a good writing point of view. Whatever their intention was, it would have been easier to read. Because even like, it's been a while since I read this book, and I was flipping back through trying to figure out like what were the parts that I liked, what was it about, and I'm like, wait, was this chapter red or blue?
Yeah.
Like, which letter is this? And like, I couldn't immediately tell just by reading a paragraph.
Yeah,
So.
which is odd with two writers. You would think that would be more distinct when there's two writers. I feel like other books I've read with multiple writers, I'm like, the writer has shifted again. And I had no sense of that in this one.
I feel like Good Omens, you can tell.
You can tell immediately in Good Omens.
It's Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman.
It's super different.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like most of the time you can tell when the author switches. And in this one, I can only assume that one of them wrote the letters and the other wrote the prose part. Even though they seemed really similar, it didn't feel like one was writing red and one was writing blue. And if they were, they write very similarly. Just super similarly. Which maybe that's good in a writing partner, but it's unusual.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
I
don't know. I don't have much else to say. I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
But sometimes I like things that are kind of cloudy like that. But yeah, you're right. The voices were really hard to tell apart.
Yeah, but you really liked it.
I did. It just like left this like syrupy taste in my mouth. Like, when I think about it, it's like this like cloudy nice feeling.
Yeah.
You know, that's usually how I think about the books that I have. Like, am I gonna keep this? And like, it gave me that feeling. And I was like, I like looking at it. Yeah.
Well, exactly. It was nice, especially that like the love interests were both female, but it wasn't like that was a big deal. That wasn't the point. The point is not that it's a lesbian romance. The point is that they're from warring sides and fighting each other. It was nice to read a book where it was just like that. Like, you don't get a lot of books where like that's not the point. The point is not that they're lesbians. The point is something else, but you get that still. I feel like that's more rare in literature than it needs to be. And
and this I don't think would be in like the queer section of the bookstore. It would be in the sci-fi section. Like
it's very
novellas
sci-fi.
Or something, but like it wouldn't be
it's
in
not
the queer
fiction.
section. And I think it's nice that more and more of that is popping up. That's just like in the general section, and I happen to keep finding books that have queer characters in them. And it's not like a big deal. It's just part of the story. And that's so important.
It is.
Because before it was all like they were trying to recreate rom-com style, but it always ended tragically, and it always was just like horrible and depressing because it was like too real. And when you're writing fantasy and sci-fi, it's like it's a whole different world. There's so much more room for like, this is just how the world is. Why do we have to like put on all of the same social pressures that are on the real world?
That is, because it was Romeo and Juliet, I was like, oh, there's gonna be a murder-suicide kind of thing. Like, they're both going to die. And that they didn't do that was really nice. That in the end, you have the hopefulness that like, oh, they're both going to make it and they're both going to be happy. Like, there's the possibility of that. That was really nice. That probably made up for most of the rest of the book to me. From like from like the point where Blue decides to eat the berries to the end, I thought was great. I really enjoyed that whole last bit. But I do feel like I slogged to there. And then maybe not necessarily the writing got better, but that I was more engaged in it. Like the plot was finally there. Like, it was fully formed now. And there was something to lose finally. And then there was like that moment where you get to like gain it all back again. Like, it was happy. You got to have a happy ending, basically. Like, not necessarily the most happy ending, because Red could still not make it out alive. And Blue could still not necessarily be alive with the way the time shifting works. But still, it was nice. It was nice to have the hopefulness. And I don't read a lot of sci-fi also, so I don't know if this is more like standard for sci-fi. No, okay.
I mean, I don't
There's no other sci-fi you've read in this
I don't know.
style?
It's so hard because like sci-fi is so often overwritten, but not in prose style. Like, not pretty. It's overwritten in the fact that it's like
describe everything,
full of information so that you can fully understand the science of the world. And I guess that's what I liked about it, was that it was kind of a sci-fi world, but it wasn't overly scienced. And I didn't really want to know the details because, if I'm honest, I'm more of a fantasy reader. And when someone goes into all the sciencey details and tries to make it sound real, I mostly skim. And then I just like come out the other end hoping there's a good plot.
Sci-fi,
you know?
because I was like, that's too much. So this was maybe more a little fantasy too, though.
That was me kind of dipping my toe into sci-fi, I think, and then I found some other authors that I was enjoying that were sci-fi. So now I'm actually like delving in a little bit. I do find my limits. It's just like too much science for me. I don't know that much. Like, is this realistic? I don't really care.
Like, does this pertain to the plot? Do I need to know how this ship works in order for it to move the plot forward at all? Or like, are you just putting it in because you want to sound really clever, which that's part of the genre, but it's my least favorite part of the genre.
So I wonder if there'll be like a subgenre at some point so people can tell the difference between like the overwritten stuff that like some people really love, and they love having all those details because it makes it feel real to them. And like kind of more fantasy-esque writing where you're just in the world.
Well, even fantasy has like there's like high fantasy.
That's true.
They've already split up, but I don't know of that same kind of thing with sci-fi.
It's really not, as far as I know.
There should be.
There should be.
But it would be nice. If you could separate a little bit more from
sci-fi.
Honestly. Soft sci-fi or like soft would be a best way to describe. Like sci-fi so you can have like in space, but also not describing how hyperdrive's work.
And that's why I started with like short stories.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a shorter book. I found some like short story books that I was like, okay, I'm gonna try these. I like the sci-fi idea, I just don't want too much.
Yeah.
And the short stories are nice because they really can't. Like, they don't have space to like sit there and explain the whole thing.
Yeah.
If they do, it's a bad story, so.
Yes, they have to get to the point.
And so,
I like that.
yeah. So that kind of got me into it.
Brightly Burning was the only one I've read recently that's sci-fi, but it's sci-fi kind of young adult romance. It's based on Jane Eyre. It's very Jane Eyre, but then in space with some solar punk. That was good. It is not at all comparative to this. They're not similar in any other way.
Not a
They're just
compound.
both kind of, but that's another one that like she doesn't overly describe the sci-fi elements. Like it's more about it being Jane Eyre in space than it is about how sci-fi it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yes, there's not really any like comparable books to this one. Like I haven't read anything like this. I was thinking short stories that are written in letter form would be the closest thing, but this one then feels padded.
That's the way to put it.
Yeah.
I don't know, because, yeah, it was really unique, so I was going to look into maybe both of the authors, but I feel like it's mostly El-Mohtar.
Yeah.
That's, like, bringing the uniqueness to it. I don't know, I could be wrong. I don't know,
Right?
Max
I was trying to
Gladstone.
read up on them, but yeah, his little section at the back, I don't know, they have a cute picture. But his little section's very short, and hers is quite long, so I assume that you're right on that she's written a lot more things. But yeah, who knows?
But
I
they all
never
looked
heard of
pretty
anything.
short and, like,
Yeah.
poetic, so. Oh.
I'd be interested to like know who wrote what section in here. Like how they split up the work on it. Because I could almost have seen this starting as like the letters in like a Reddit thread or something, and someone being like wanting to add on and doing it as like a collab over the internet or something. Like it felt like it could have started in that sense where people were like really excited about the idea of the story, and then it kind of morphed into something else.
Yeah.
Nothing else like it that we know of.
That we know of.
No, it was good. It was good overall. It was definitely totally different from what I was expecting to. Though.
Did you take a turn though? Like, you were not enjoying
I was
it
not
at the beginning?
it was just, it's the first book I've read that as I was reading it, I was like, this is what overwriting is. This is what just saying pretty words for the sake of pretty words is. Because I never really had that, because like, people could say that about Laini Taylor, but I genuinely thought all the poetic language in Strange the Dreamer was like giving me a picture. Like I thought that was all necessary, even when she like really waxed poetic. I felt like that was so much. But in here there were sections where I was just like, what you just said doesn't actually make sense. It sounds pretty, but like they like described something and I was like, that's literally not, you just didn't need all of those words. I should have marked things. I should have like, that would have made more sense. There's just a few places where I was just like, that's way too many words for what you're saying. It doesn't help at all.
So here's the thing. I think I was used to that because I read so much Murakami.
That's true.
Murakami
He does
really
like to
does.
really go on.
He goes on sometimes. Like sometimes he's writing a really quick scene that's just like, and then he made coffee and then went back to his chair and then was reading the newspaper, and it's like very simple actions. And then he weaves that in with like these long monologues that the characters have that just like ponder life.
That's true.
And so I think because I read so much of him, like that was, I was like, yeah, this is fine. And, you know, because also
I didn't feel like he was over. Well, okay, I've only read one whole book of his though.
Which
that was
one?
Kafka on the Shore,
Okay.
which has a lot of that long pondery part.
Yeah, it does.
But I liked all of it so much, and it was always like, I felt like I was understanding the characters more because of it, even though it was like long and pondery. But I was also like, yeah, I need to think about that in my own life, and like it was more philosophical or something. I never minded it in the one book at least.
All right.
It didn't bother me. But yeah, he really goes on a tangent while he's just doing simple things.
Oh, so you haven't read these other ones here?
No, I need to.
Okay, that one's my favorite, though.
Hard
Hard-boiled.
Oh, the hard-boiled. I think I got that because you recommended it. Maybe I'll have
Okay.
to read that next.
I don't know why. Hard-boiled wonder. You know, it's because it's the most fantasy.
Oh, okay.
Not
Oh,
fantasy,
okay.
but like it's a weird mix of like sci-fi fantasy
Okay.
that like he doesn't delve into in any other book that he has.
Oh,
It's
okay.
usually so like real life, but kind of weird, and maybe it's a
And then
dream.
you like have a tangent.
but
into
also
a weird
maybe they're
place.
on
Yeah.
drugs. Like, I'm not really sure. But like
That's
this
true.
one, there's like a sci-fi element where you're like they're definitely in a different world, but like what is happening here?
Okay. Oh, we'll have to read.
But you'll have to see if you
read it.
like have the same cloudiness over it.
We'll see, yeah. Because Kafka on the Shore, it was written very clearly, but then he would go on these like wild tangents.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It was
That one was
a
very
difficult book.
So that one was very Catcher in the Rye to me. Not in a
I never
bad
read
way.
Catcher in the Rye.
Oh really?
Somehow I avoided it through all of high school.
You might just for interest's sake
Mm.
read it at some point.
Yeah.
Or skim it.
I know the like
Because
basic
it's so,
plot points.
like
Oh,
it's obviously a watered down version because it's so short.
Mm.
But actually Murakami translated that book, and he's like very interested in those books.
Oh, okay, that maybe will make more sense.
So it might have taken a little.
Yeah. It was
Little
a
nip.
hard book to get through, not just because like he's going on those like long tangents and things, but also because it was just like the concepts he's having you go over could be really like a lot of layers to them and then really heavy. So it was like you'd read some and I almost feel tired because I was like just thinking so much while reading it. So that was it was very slow to get through, and not because I wasn't enjoying it.
Yeah.
It was just a difficult book. But it was called Kafka on the Shore, so I kind of understood what I was getting into. Like I knew it wasn't going to be a
Yeah.
simple read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My Murakami books have tons of little tabs in them because
Yeah.
those moments come up and I'm like, I need to think about this later, but I want to keep reading, so I
He's
just like
good at
put
like
tabs in
making
it.
you stop and think about things for a long time afterwards.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I would say the least thinky book he has that's just easy to read through is Norwegian Wood.
I did see that movie.
That one was
That
just
was not
like,
a happy movie.
yeah, I mean it's really depressing at the end, but it was definitely more of a romance story that just goes along, you know, and it's not like these crazy, like, man, 1Q84 is so long.
I don't know if I'll ever.
It was my
It'll-
favorite for a while.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
It's this thick though.
It's technically
so
3
big.
books,
Oh.
so
That's fair.
it's not meant to be read.
It's like reading all of Lord of the Rings in one
Yeah,
tome. Yeah.
exactly, and being like, this is a long book.
Should we just wrap up?
Yeah, we can.
That's all of our
We went on
thoughts.
some tangents.
Yeah. Thanks for joining me. We'll have to do
Yeah.
this again. I'll read.
Yay, now that I live here.
Yeah. And be sure to check out Bean Book Reviews.
Yeah.
Bean Book Reviews, and I'll have it linked down below, so definitely check those out. And you've been reading like really like not popular fiction books that you've been talking about. There've been a lot of more.
I was
Isn't it
reading a
like-
lot of Asian
Yeah.
literature and Asian American literature. I did just finish reading A Dirty Job by Christopher Moore, so kind of all over the place, but
Yeah.
most of my videos so far have been Asian American literature.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely check her out. And yeah, we'll sign off. So, yup. Bye!